I'm going to put you on the spot today, my friend, because you this is something we've probably talked about early days of Seeking Wisdom, but you talked about this at our company meeting yesterday, and it's about managing your career at a high growth company. And so I actually brought you, thanks to G2, he hooked us up with a whiteboard.
Ooh.
I actually want you to draw, and this is why we're doing this on YouTube.
Yep.
I want to turn this over to you, and I want you to explain, because here's the deal. We talk a lot about, I want to talk about career stuff. We haven't gone there in a while. We're talking about a new phase for us at Drift, and we're talking about managing your career at a company that is growing very fast. And I want you to talk about the different phases that people go through.
Sure. So I'm drawing right here. So this all this
is also a hack to make you watch us on video.
And subscribe, and then hit the little bell button on YouTube so you get notified.
Bing.
But back in the day, in the early days, pre-Seeking Wisdom, if you can imagine such a day, DG and I used to have these meetings where he was the only marketer on the team.
Correct.
He had just come on, and I was kind of explaining to him, like, how he could set himself up to grow, right, as the company was growing. And I said to DG that what happens most of the time is that a company, and I'm drawing this out, a company usually, if it's growing quickly, will grow faster than the individual. And so I'm going to draw that out now. And so what usually happens is, and this is, we're talking about companies experiencing hypergrowth. So here I'm drawing, the top line here is the company. And the bottom line here is the person with my little stick figure right here. And what I'm drawing here is that over time, if a company is undergoing hypergrowth and a person is not able to keep up ahead of that growth, which is a daunting thing, which is a normal thing to happen.
Also, not a negative thing.
Not a negative thing. It's normal. This is normal. Then a gap will form between the two growth paths, and the company will have to start to bring in more people who have that experience who can fill that gap.
Yes.
Right? They may be more experienced. They might have different experience. They may, have more years doing the same thing. It depends on the problem. But this is usually what happens in a hyper-growth company. But if you're in a slow-growing company, which is also normal, right? The company could grow, and I'm going to use the letter C for company.
Yep.
Slower than the individual. Again, I'm going to have my beautiful stick figure here. So in this case, the individual is growing faster than the company. And in those cases, what happens is that's a growth-oriented individual who happens to be growing faster than the company that they're in. They will typically leave that company and go somewhere else for opportunity because they're growing faster.
You see this a lot of people leaving, 1,000-person public companies and joining, companies like, early stage startups, right?
Like
that's
Drift.
why. That's what they want.
Not because there's anything wrong with those companies, not because they didn't have a great career there, but because the growth opportunities were going away and they were growing faster than the company.
Well, and usually in a company like that, okay, hey, you do this for 6 months, then you get a raise and a promotion. You do it 6 months again, and now you're manager, senior manager, whatever, all the way up.
Yes. And then the last thing, which is super rare for this thing to happen, almost never happens. So don't get down on yourself if this isn't happening to you, because this almost never happens. And that is what I've drawn here, which is the company is experiencing hypergrowth and the individual is experiencing hypergrowth, and they are actually growing slightly ahead of the company in their own personal growth, right? And what that means is they're able to continue to jump into bigger and bigger opportunities because they are ahead of the needs of the company. Now, this almost never happens, right? And I was telling a story today. We did some onboarding with some new drifters. And I explained this to them, and I said, this is why we hear so many stories of, founder CEOs like Jeff Bezos or Zuckerberg or, Bill Gates or whoever you want to choose, or Steve Jobs or any of these people that we kind of hold up there, or Sarah Blakely, who runs Spanx.
Yes.
Who I love her Instagram, by the way. You should subscribe. And to her husband, Jesse.
And Jesse.
Itzler. But anyway, why they are worth talking about is not just because they founded a great company and whatever.
Point.
It's because what they've done is so unusual to go from some person like Sarah Blakely, who started this Spanx billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, out of the back of her car with, I believe, $5,000 savings, right? No savings, no investment, and built this multi-billion-dollar brand. and is still running that multi-billion-dollar brand years later, because that never happens.
Right.
I'm not talking about a company being created that's worth billions. That barely never happens. But a company that goes from nothing to billions, and the same person can run it when it was just one person, an idea, and now that it's a huge international company.
And what's crazy is like if you unpack those people, Bezos, Sarah Blakely, Zuckerberg, right? It's easy to say, yeah, they're really freaking smart and they learn faster than everybody else. But I think it's if you look at the teams around them.
Yep.
They early on, right? Like look at the team Zuckerberg built around him. You shared that graphic with us where there's something about like the senior management team at Facebook all has an average, the tenure is like a decade, right? And so obviously he found the right team early on.
And it has continued to scale and offer growth opportunities so that those hyper-growth individuals can continue to grow. That's this graph that we have right here. This is highly unusual. And what usually happens, which hasn't happened on Facebook yet, which is a great example, is that even if this happens for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, at some point, either the company or the individual starts to flatten out.
Yes.
Totally normal, right? Like this is like infinite growth.
Well, because the company, then there's 5,000, 10,000 employees.
Yeah. We're drawing here like an infinitely growing company and individual. So what happens is it flattens out, and again, you get back to one of the first two graphs, which there's a mismatch. Either you grew faster than the company, or the company grew faster than you. In both cases, there will be some kind of change that happens.
Yes.
This is an important concept that I wish some old uncle with gray hair in his beard would have told me a long time ago.